let's talk about habits that you should perhaps try to incorporate as a beginner painter. And, I shall talk you through from start to finish how we're going to paint this seascape. It is a beginner demo, so bear that in mind, but this is the painting you'll do. So we've got a reference picture here that's been laminated. So I have got the option to put the paint physically on the laminated photo to check the tonal value. And as a beginner, that's quite a useful tool to have. But we'll do the drawing, and I would advise you to, have a good reference photo. It's got nice composition. I'm going to need to change a few things. That in the photo the horizon is split halfway, which is not great. So we can make a decision. Do we have more sea or more sky? That I'm going to make this scene about the reflections on the sand. So it makes sense to perhaps bring the horizon up slightly. So we have more sea. We've got some distant rocks and cliffs and things off in the distance there. So there's one off in the distance, and let's just have a look. This actually comes about halfway, so maybe bring it a bit further there. So get in the habit of just checking and measuring, that look to see where these things are in relation to other things. Obviously we've made a slight change by moving the horizon up, so you take that into account. And then we've got another rock face here, and a good habit to remember is things like rocks, clouds and so on. You can afford to get them slightly wrong, because they could be different, whereas things like people's faces and things like that, you've got to get really accurate. So there we go. And then there's another rock here that comes in front of all of that little lot. So already, just with the drawing, we're getting a sense of distance. So I'm bringing the rocks closer to us. That just because it's in the photo, you don't have to follow it exactly. There could be elements that are good to use, and then maybe there's elements that are not so good. So we've got the water as it comes in here. Now that looks okay, and I can just suggest where that little wave is there. Does that look okay? If your drawing looks okay, go with that. You could trace this or use a proportional divider, which got a video on that, links in the description, on how to use to get an accurate drawing. But I'm going for a loose painting, so I'm quite happy to just freehand it. So this is the reflection of what's going on above. So that's all we need for the drawing. I may well add some figures, possibly, but we'll see. Another good habit is set yourself up for success. Plenty of brushes. I normally have probably more than this, but this will be fine for this painting. Don't drop them on the floor. And, use a brush that's big enough for the job. We'll do the sky. If I try and paint the sky with a tiny little brush like this, it's going to take forever. And I won't get the marks that I want for the scene. So a big brush, So what color is the sky? It's blue. So there we go. Blue sky. Right. Also, that's a beginner mistake. I know that, we probably would add a little bit of white to it as well, wouldn't we? That, and then paint the sky. And so the issue with that is it's too blue, and it's probably too dark in tone. So let's just put a little bit of that paint on the sky there, and you can see, that's the problem. And the problem would be if I painted the sky like that, and then if I got the tonal value right on the rocks, I wouldn't have the contrast between the two. So the painting just, would look boring, and it just wouldn't read well as a painting. So if anything, I'd probably quite like to push the contrast. So I could even go, either darker with the rocks or lighter with the sky. The rocks are already pretty dark, so I think I'll go a little bit lighter with the sky. So let's have a go at matching the colour here. that we've got, let's add a little bit of white and blue. So that's a good place to start. It looks, we know the sky's blue, but we have to also bear in mind that this is not the sky. This is a photograph of the sky that has been taken by someone who knows very little about photography, myself. So you've got to kind of tap into your memories of what does the sky look like when you're out and about. So that's a lot lighter in tone than what's there, and it's still probably more towards blue. So I can just use just a touch of yellow, because that's the sort of it goes towards green. It's got kind of a greeny feel to it. So that's the correct color, but slightly lighter in tone. But I'll go with that, I think, because I want it to be a little bit lighter in tone. So it's a good idea to paint thinly to start with. Get the canvas covered. This is a 30 by 40 centimeter canvas panel, and use opportunities when you're sort of doing these sort of practice demos to have a go at practicing your brushwork. And by that I mean rather than just doing this, which is very boring, and the painting will look very boring, put in some, we're doing a big area here with a big brush. Let's just be brave and put in these kind of marks, sweeping brush marks, and get in the habit of having enough paint on your brush. We are still painting thinly, but you need enough on it to let it leave the brush and end up on the canvas. So by painting quite thin, that I've got some of this under staining come through. Again, in the description there's a link to a video where I talk about what I do to do that. But basically this is just a little bit of burnt umber and white, and this is oil paint, but it's been allowed to dry for several weeks. You can use acrylic, which dries quickly. So there we go, that's the sky done, and there's a little bit of atmosphere in there because there's a I did kind of mix on the palette on the canvas a little bit as well. So switch to another brush. Well, it's good to have plenty of brushes on the go. So we've got the sea here, which I can see the sea. It tends to steer towards green a little bit, and it's a little bit darker in tone than the sky, but that's not that's too dark. So let's just add a little bit of white into there. So it's a little bit lighter in tone, but again, maybe that's going to add a little bit of contrast. So mix up enough to do the job. And the colours I'm using here are just titanium white, cadmium yellow pale, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and burnt umber. And if you're a beginner, I would advise you to just keep it simple. Start with a simple palette. So another good habit to get in the habit of doing is being conscious of edges. Now that is classed as a soft edge there, because there's no defining line. You can't see where the sky finishes and the sea starts. But what that does, it sends it off into the distance. Now it looks like it's a long way away. So I can perhaps increase the greenness as it comes closer to us, that things off in the distance, like this part of the sea, which is a long way away, will have the effect of atmospheric, all the particles in the sky, which tend to make things blue. And then things closer to us will be warmer. I'll talk about that a bit more in the demo. So again, still painting thinly at the moment. We may come over and work on this area again. So we've got some, realistic looking colours here. So we've now got a distant hill, distant rock face, whatever we want to call it. So I'm going to steer it more towards blue. It's quite green in the photo, but if I put more blue in it, it's going to be more interesting. So it's the same tonal value, but a different color. So I'll try that, see what how that works. And because this is a long way away, we don't need detail. So, that's fine for that distant hill. And then there's another one that comes across here, which is a little bit closer. I'll just add a little bit of green and just make it a little bit darker. But I don't want to go too dark because I've got to save the darks for these, areas that are a lot closer to us. And still maybe soft edges. So that's another maybe one coming across here. So again, we've got soft edges all in here. It just gives it illusion that it's a long way away. So I can add a little bit of brown, a bit of red maybe. So we're starting to add a little bit of color now. These rocks are a little bit closer. So try and get in the habit of just being loose with your brushwork. Don't necessarily hold the brush up like this, like you do with a pen. It's going to make your brushwork very tight. Hold it towards the end of the handle, and move it around, and you'll come up with these abstract shapes, just more interesting. I get to reload the brush. So this is Porth Town in Cornwall in the UK, and just behind these rocks here there's a man-made swimming pool in the rocks. Lots of crabs in there, so not for the faint-hearted. Get that to the shape I want, and now we can go slightly stronger, darker again, as this is now getting really close to us. Again, just roll that brush about. Still painting thinly because I'm going to come over and put some detail on these rocks. That's just painting the big shapes at the moment. And if you start with that, shapes first, it will make your life a lot easier. Don't need to worry about any detail for the moment. So let's get that covered. So we've used color temperature and tonal value to describe this scene so far. Got the lightest tone is in the sky, which generally is the rule, unless you've got snow scenes and so on. But generally speaking, the sky will be the lightest tone. The sea and the reflections here are probably the next lightest tone, and then all these rocks, they get darker and warmer and more intense, more saturation of color as they get closer to us. So the trick to painting water and the reflections in water, is not painting the sand and then paint the water over the top. What we're going to do is paint exactly what is there, which is that color, but more tonal value. That's what I'm worried about. So that's going to be too dark. That reflections tend to be, if it's a dark object, they'll be lighter, and if it's a light object, they're quite often darker. So got to get the right tonal value. So it's too warm. Let's just cool that off a little bit with a bit of blue. And there we go. And you just got to trust, you've mixed the color, it's the right tonal value. It looks way too dark on here, but that's because we're comparing it against this opposed to this. So, you need to be aware of that. So get in the habit of trusting your color mixing. If you haven't got a laminated photo, if you're outdoors painting, you can hold your brush up, squint one eye, and just check it. But I've done a couple of demos where I've painted things in completely different colors, but I've kept the tonal values, as close as I can, and they've read well as a painting. So it proves that point that tonal value is king. So get your tonal values right, and you're going to be fine. So let's actually bring another rock. But say with photos, they're not great references a lot of the time, unless you're a professional photographer and you've perhaps even photoshopped them and come up with some really good material. But it doesn't mean you can't use them. But you just have to maybe adapt. Let's just pull some other rocks in front of here. There. And we'll put some in the sea as well. So maybe that is just tallying up with that. Makes it more interesting. The sand, this is all wet sand here, and that's dry sand. So this is reflecting the colour of the sky. So it's got some blue in it, but it's also got the colour of the sand underneath. So this is why it's kind of got that sort of bluey green colour to it. So let's just go for mixing the general colour we think it is. So I think it's something like that. So it's a little bit lighter, but I'm going to go with that because I've got a lighter sky. So I think that's going to work well. And this looks like battleship grey, awful. But I'm going for a realistic looking painting on this scene. A grey Cornish day. Get a few of them, particularly in the summer. And the temptation is to go really colourful, which I do occasionally do that. But it depends on the scene you're going for. I'm going for a realistic scene on this one. So try and get in the habit of using directional lines, directional brush marks that you can use those to describe a scene. So it's a little bit lighter over here where the sand is dry, and gives us a nice hard edge there at the base there. Make that abstract. It's soft in here, so a little bit of blending in there. And honestly, if you've never painted before, you could do this. It's all you've got to do is just paint what is there. I know it sounds too easy, but honestly, it is. Anyone who tells you painting is, only for the talented and the few, they're lying. They want it to be special and not accessible to everyone. And I've proved the point where I've had complete beginners who've never painted before come to my workshops, and they've painted photorealistic paintings, but with interesting brush marks. That's what we want. We don't want it to be like a photo because I've got a photo. I want it to be interesting. So another little trick we can do is we can actually make it a little bit warmer and darker here, which will make it appear to be closer. I quite often do that in my watercolour paintings. So I use some of the tricks there. So a bit warmer, so it's more sort of purple, but staying along the same colour themes. No good just throwing a load of red in there or something. It's got to fit in with the rest of the painting. So instantly that gives us a sense of that it's closer to us. And we can put some of those interesting brush marks in here. So again, painting the sea here, it would be better to paint what we see. We know this is kind of water on the top of here and the foam sitting on top of the water, but you can't do that. You can't just paint the sand under here, then the water on the top, and then put the foam, and you just end up with a mess. So you are literally going to just paint what you see, which are these shapes. I'm not going to replicate every individual shape. Just take inspiration from what's there. There's bigger shapes here, and then they get smaller because they're further away over here. Further, they're closer together, and so on. And then we'll paint the the white foam between these gaps, because that's what we see here, and then we've got a line of the white foam across here, the waves breaking. But let's put some white on our reference picture there. It's miles away from white. It's white, but it's probably more like that, and that's an amateur mistake to put white paint there. I'll go slightly lighter than what's there, but so let's have a go with that bit of wave. It's breaking. Just roll that brush about, move it about. And you honestly, you don't need expensive brushes. These aren't expensive, these brushes I've got here. Having expensive equipment will not make you a better painter. Having knowledge of tonal value and a little bit of color theory, that will go a long way. So there's that wave. Just again, paint the shapes I see in here. And if you study master paintings that look photorealistic, painters like Sargent, Ted Seago, and so on, up close, it's just going to be a massive brushwork, just like this. And they've not painted everything. It's another habit to get into, is not painting everything. Just what is needed to describe the scene. That's all you need. I'm doing a collaboration with Stuart Davis, who's got another YouTube channel, big channel, lots of followers on there. That he's a master at just painting what is needed to tell the story. Doesn't go into fiddly details. He actually uses really big brushes. I've got one here. Brushes like that on large paintings, and it's great technique he uses. He has done lots of detailed stuff in the past. So he's very good at drawing and painting detail if he wants to, but you don't need to do it. And I'm definitely, as I've got older as an artist and more experienced, I'm going away from detail. That the more I can get away with painting less detail, the better. So yes, a collaboration coming soon. So I'll have details about that as and when it's ready. But basically, he's doing an oil painting, and I actually did a similar scene or the same scene in watercolor. I'm sure that'll be of interest to you guys. I shall share it on this channel and my watercolor channel as well. So I'm using this big, fairly reasonable sized brush for most of this painting. We don't want a straight line across here. We want it interesting. And again, it gets thinner as it disappears off here. So far, other than that little bit of detail there, I've just painted shapes, and it's got a fairly realistic look to it. But we can take it a little bit further. So I'm going to put these rocks in here because we've got a large area with nothing going on here, so we can add some interest in here. So let's start with a bit of blue and just grade off a little bit. So I'm going to use a rigger here because I just want to put a small mark there. Again, not worrying about detail. These rocks off in the distance, they're so small, you're not going to be able to see what they are. And then we'll go a little bit stronger in tone, a little bit darker. And use any brush that is going to do the job. There's no right or wrong. This rigger isn't designed for doing rocks, but for the sort of small little marks I'm trying to make here, I can make it quite flat and just put in those little marks there, and it works. And the great thing about oil paint is that you can manipulate it and move it about. Now I wanted a more of a flat edge under there, but I can come back and change that. So another good habit is get into the habit of adding connection. It's so important. I really would strongly recommend connecting shapes up. If I can paint all of this and make it look like one shape, it will just have a wholeness to it. So that's what I will aim to do, and I'll do that by using these rocks. That rock now connects to there. Another one there. So we've got connection throughout the painting there. So I can put a few little ripples in the sea, but again, do we need detailed ripples? No, we don't. We just need a suggestion that there's a little bit of something going on there. So I just use a flat brush. Just suggest now I can use that opportunity to just flatten those little shapes I wanted there. But remember to try and follow the perspective line. Just enough, just to suggest. And then maybe be a little bit bigger here because it's closer to us. That's fine, that's all we need. So I think it'd be a good idea to maybe get a little bit of that green in here as well. Let's get rid of some of this orange underpainting coming through here. Don't mind some of it coming through, but again, it will just add a little bit of connection and unify the painting. And the only way to be good at mixing your colors is to practice. Paint as much as you can. I can tell you use this much yellow, use that much blue, and so on, but you still got to just do it. A combination of hard edges and soft edges. And you can get quite a realistic, detailed look, and people will think you've spent hours just painting this scene. But I'd imagine we'll get this scene done in under an hour. Let's make decisions. Let's pull that into there. Add a little bit of connection. And there's a little bit of a darker edge just as the wave is turning over. So I am paying attention to some details that a little bit darker in there, but you only need just a couple of little marks. Actually, the wave is breaking over here, so let's just suggest that. That's quite nice. Maybe just a few little splashes. Get in the habit of standing back from your work regularly. It's a good habit to get into. That when you're painting and looking at it close up like this, sometimes you can't see it properly. So another good way sometimes, if you take a picture of it on your phone and then just look at it as a smaller picture, can help make you see things slightly differently. But if you just step back from it, it's a good idea. I'm just changing it was too similar to this one off in the distance, so I just got rid of that. There's a hair there, and I'm going to try and make these rocks more abstract, a little bit more interesting in shape. But in the photo, because of the way the camera is exposed, this is all just kind of disappeared into one, which is nice, the one shape, but I want to add a little bit of atmosphere to it. So we can go for putting some interesting colors in these rocks, but as long as we stay in the right tonal values. So just experiment, come up with your own sort of colors. So it just needs to be darker than what's here. That's all I need to worry about. And I've got thick paint, I'm just laying that paint on nice and thick, which will give it a little bit of texture. So we're getting a sense of atmosphere. Break this up a little bit. Maybe just suggest a few little highlights on these rocks. Again, this is a round brush, and I'm just rolling it, just creating those different textures. And I've got no detail of anything like that on these rocks further away because they're a long way away. We don't need it. But as we get closer, we then start to see these little, maybe the grass area on the rock and so on. And I don't need to put that little structure on the top there if I don't want to. If I was doing a commission of this beach, I probably would put it on there because someone would recognize the scene and they'd be disappointed if I didn't put it on. But if I'm just painting just a seascape with rocks on, maybe it doesn't need it on there. So you don't have to put it all in. So there is a wall here, a wall. That's quite maybe interesting. Maybe I will put those little structures in, maybe just suggest them. So the blue and the brown make a nice dark. So let's go really dark in here, which will just maybe make a little bit more of that wall. And just roll the brush about. Just have a look at Impressionist painting close up, and you'll see all of this where they rolled the brush about and created all of this lovely abstraction. Reload that brush. Break up a little bit. That's fine. Looks interesting. So there's a few rocks on the beach. So I go suggesting those. There's one there. Another one there. Small one there. Don't have to paint them all. A little bit of a lighter tone. So this is probably as detailed as we're going to get in this painting, but there's a little bit of, it's wet on the top. So it's got a little bit of a sparkle on there. Maybe there's just a little bit of sparkle on that there. And where the that big rock is sitting, there's just a little bit of a indentation in the sand. Just these little touches, can make it look quite realistic. Again, directional, and we can suggest movement here. The water's coming in and out. It's all about just suggesting. And don't need to do it all. Just those few marks in there. We're just trying to get it to look like wet sand. So I think I could possibly go a little bit darker in there. So this is sort of the stage now where the kind of painting's finished, really. That it probably would be okay as it is here. But I could just have a look at it, see could I make any improvements. That for me, this doesn't look right. So let's just maybe just try and maybe just need to have bigger shapes here. And maybe just connect it up. Let's put those little lookout points, and then I can call it Porth Tower. There's one there, and that's literally the amount of detail, because if I do a really detailed building on there, it won't fit in with the rest of the scene. And then there's another one here, which is obviously slightly darker. Add a bit of life to the scene. Again, just little marks, just suggestions that they could be seagulls. So I don't think I will put a figure on. I quite like it looking more sort of just natural. Let's have a seagull there. White, light against the dark. Yeah. So there you go. That we've taken inspiration from the photo. That we've got very similar to the colours here, but I think we've pushed it a little bit to change the composition slightly to bring the cliff face closer to us. But it kind of says what I wanted it to say. So let's see how we've done. We've got this reference picture, and in a fairly short space of time, let's pop it in a frame and see what we've managed to come up with. So there you go, quite a realistic looking painting, but that's down to getting the correct tonal values. So there's definitely a few good habits to get into, which I've covered on that video, but there's a lot more. So hit the like and subscribe, because I'll talk about them over the next few videos, I'm sure. But as a beginner, I would say tackle something like this. It's realistic to what you can achieve with the skill sets you have. And then as you progress and become comfortable with tonal value, brushwork and so on, you can then perhaps experiment with colour. This is a demo I did the other day where I perhaps used brighter, more sort of perhaps staining colours, and come up with a scene. I've pushed the contrast and so on, and used some more lively brushwork. But build up to something like that. If you want to see this demonstration, there'll be a button to click at the end of this video. So give it a go. Keep your brushwork nice and loose. Don't get too tight with it. And main thing is enjoy yourself. But hopefully on this video I've given you some insight to how it can be achieved even as a beginner. With just a simple set of colours that you could quite easily paint this, I'm sure. So let me know in the comments what you think, and good luck if you decide to give it a go. So I'll see you on the next video.